My name is Alex McKenzie.
Is that your actual name?
No, if you want my formal name, it is William Alexander McKenzie. I'm not quite sure where the names all come from.
Okay, because I was going to ask you, do you know why everybody calls you Alex?
I'm not sure. I've never been called William, ever, although of course it's my formal name, so for dealings with government and banks and official establishments, I have to say that my full name is William Alexander McKenzie. And I don't know where the two names come from. The William, I think, is my Welsh grandfather, and Alexander was a patient of my mother in a hospital in London, and he seemed to be very close to her, which I won't develop.
Okay. Where were you born?
I was born in London, in Stoke Newington or Hackney.
So does that make you a Cockney?
I'm not sure what it makes me, but anyway, why there? Because my mother and father, like many people of their age in the 1930s, one from Wales, one from Scotland, where...
Which was which?
Oh, my mother was Welsh, my father was Scottish, hence the name McKenzie.
Okay, yeah.
And like many people of their age, in the late 1920s and early 1930s, there was little work or little appropriate work for either of them in their chosen careers where they lived. So they both moved to London.
Okay, and what did your father do?
My father was a pharmacist.
Okay.
He always wanted, so he said, to be a forester. But his father absolutely forbade that and made him have a career or training as a pharmacist, which he did in Aberdeen at the university there. But he couldn't find work in that area of Scotland anyway. My mother was given secretarial training by her mother to give her a better chance of a career, but not in the part of South Wales, the part of Wales where they lived. So they both, separately of course, moved to London, and my father found work as a pharmacist in London, and my mother found work firstly in Birmingham, as it happened, where she trained as an eye nurse, and then moved to London where there were more jobs, and found a job in an eye hospital or an eye clinic in the West End of London.
Okay. And I understand that your father worked in a famous chemist.
Dad worked in... my father worked in a famous chemist in Wigmore Street. It was called, I think, John Bell and Croydon, which I think still masquerades under that name, and still in Wigmore Street.
Yes,
so it was a very upmarket pharmacy. And my mother was also working in the same area in an eye clinic, and had to take the prescriptions for the patients to a pharmacy, which is where my father worked.
So that's how they met?
That's how they met, yes.
Okay, that's quite sweet, really, isn't
it? Yeah, isn't it? Yes.
And I understand that you didn't stay in Hackney for that long.
No, my father was uncomfortable living in that part of the world for various reasons. And he found a job in Middlesex.
You have to tell people where Middlesex is.
Oh, Middlesex doesn't exist in the same form anymore, but it was the county of Middlesex, which was not, at that time, part of London at all. It's since been incorporated into Greater London, or into London. So he found a job in Hayes in Middlesex as manager of a pharmacy. So they moved with me in, I think, 1937.
Oh, right, okay. So 1937, you would have been 2?
In 1937, I would have been 2 because I was born in 1935, right at the beginning of it. And the dates are important, not the 1935, but 1937 very soon became 1939, which is when the Second World War started.
And I understand you didn't stay in Hayes at the war. Were you evacuated?
I didn't stay in Hayes because my parents were afraid of being bombed, which they weren't, but there were plenty of bombs close by during the war. But they wanted to move me out of London to spare the possibility of me being damaged by enemy action, actually.
Yeah. Okay, that seems fair.
And the reason, or where to send me or what to do with me. And as an evacuee, you and most people would associate that with trainloads of young children being shipped out of not only London, but London in this case, to various parts of the country as evacuees. I got to Wales. I was sent to my grandparents, that is my mother's mother and father, who had a small farm on the hills in part of Wales.
Which part of Wales?
It was in southwest Wales. It was on the borders of what is now what was Glamorganshire and Carmarthenshire. It was north of Swansea. It was in...
What was the name of the town?
Oh, the closest town was Pontardawy, the Dowie being the name of the river which came out in Swansea.
Okay.
So they weren't in the valley, but they were in the hills surrounding the Tower Valley.
And if you weren't an evacuee by train and you didn't have the little label, how did you get to your grandparents?
My mother was very friendly with a person in the road they lived in Hayes, who had a motorbike. And had a motorbike and sidecar. And however she did it, but she persuaded him to take her and me on her lap in the sidecar to my grandparents.
My goodness. And do you remember the motorcycle trip? Or was it
very, very, very vaguely. I remember being uncomfortably in the sidecar, sitting on my mother's lap.
Oh, that's actually quite sweet. But
Yes.
So you arrive in Wales with your grandparents.
Yes.
What language did they speak to you in?
Well, they were not an unusual example, but because most of the people locally were, probably 80% of the people locally were as we had Welsh as the first language, and my grandmother and grandfather only spoke Welsh with each other, which had an impact on me because my Mangee, which is grandmother in Welsh, spoke good English.
Mm-hmm.
But my Dadki, which is Welsh for grandfather, didn't speak English at all.
Not at all, not even sort of business.
No, I'm definitely not business. Really? Yeah. So he didn't even try speaking English with me.
Okay.
And he only spoke Welsh to me. So I had to become fluent enough at 4 years old, whatever that means, in Welsh to be able to speak to him, or him to me, in fact.
Okay. And what did you do on you said it was a little farm. What did you do on the farm? Can you remember what a day looked like?
Oh, yes, very clearly. I'll just touch first of all and come back to farm, because the farm had a big, big influence on my life. So at 4 or 4.5, I was of school age, of infant school age, so I was sent to the local school, which again, as 80% of the population, taught in both English and Welsh. Mm-hmm. So there was English, but also Welsh lessons. So that helped in my talking to the grandfather.
Okay.
And that also developed my own Welsh, which I still can speak. Fi'n gallu siarad Cymraeg yn iawn.
Excellent.
And I now can speak though this was now 80 years ago or 75 years ago, but I still find that I have still basic Welsh there to be used.
Okay.
But your comment or your question about the farm, what did I do? I remember it as probably within my many years the most comfortable and pleasant and happy years of my life, because I was there from 5 until the end of the war in 1945, when I suppose my parents thought it was safe to me to come back.
Yeah.
So I had 5 or 6 years on the farm, which was a very isolated farm, only about 3/4 of a mile from where the school was and where the village was, but very isolated otherwise, and without any facilities whatsoever, and I mean whatsoever.
So did you have electricity?
No. No electricity, no gas, no water, no road to it. There was a track to it, but no proper road.
I've actually been there, so I can know it when you describe it. But can you describe, although it was only 3/4 of a mile from the school, the hill that you had to go up to or down to, depending on which way you were going?
Down to it was easy because it was so steep. Up to it was very, very steep, to the point where during the time that I lived there, no vehicles other than army motorbikes would dare to come up the road, because they would inevitably stall, wear out their clutch. So there was an alternative route past the local church, which also had the same very, very steep hill from the church down to the farm. So trucks delivering coal or cattle or picking up cattle were able to get to the farm and just drive straight on down the very steep hill to the main road.
Okay, so you talk about being comfortable in a place that had no electricity. So what made it comfortable?
Oh, I lived there with my grandfather and grandmother, who were very kind to me, who didn't bother me, and who didn't ask me questions about school because they didn't know what I was doing. Probably I didn't either.
So did you get into trouble at school?
I don't remember doing so. No.
But they didn't ask you about it
And
anyway?
they didn't ask me about it anyway. But what did I do? Why was it so happy on the farm? As a simple answer, there was no discipline. I was totally free to do what I wanted.
You didn't get bored?
No. I didn't get bored because there were the animals to chase. Don't ask me why I chased the animals, but I did. My grandfather took milk to the, it was called the stand, but they sold milk to the milk marketing board, and they didn't pick up at the farm because it was too difficult to get to. But at the church, which I just mentioned, there was a stand where 2 or 3 local farmers put their churns ready to be picked up. So every morning my grandfather put the 2 horses, because it was so steep, you needed 2 horses to pull the cart up the hill, and they were always Dick and Captain. The horses changed in the 5 years, but the horses were always called Dick and Captain. Anyway, when I was not going to school, I used to go with my grandfather every morning up to the church with the milk, so that took an hour in the morning. For the rest of the time I chased the cows and helped get the cows in.
And so it was just cows that were up there, you didn't have sheep?
We didn't. They had a small numbers of sheep, but my grandfather and grandmother were pretty ancient, even by then, and there was a lot of work running the farm. In fact, initially my grandfather worked in the local, there was a steelworks in the village or in the town, and he worked there. so to bring in extra money actually.
And did anybody else live at the farm? So you talked about your grandmother and your grandfather.
For a short while, there were 8 children in the there were 6 children in the family, and 2 of them, the 2 who weren't married, stayed there until they until they married, basically.
Okay.
And then they moved away, but that was just in the first year. And for the rest of the time, I just lived there with my grandmother and grandfather.
Sounds nice. And at school, did you get any leg pulling for being English?
Not that I recall it.
Okay.
Plenty of leg pulling when I got back to England and went to the grammar school, because I had a very strong Welsh accent, and I was good or bad, but I was known for 7 years at the grammar school as Taffy McKenzie, which I think is a great conflict of names, but
yes.
Anyway. But the farm was great. There were fields you could walk around on, pick nuts from the nut trees during the nut picking season. The dogs, one of the 2 or 3 dogs always came with me as well, so I used to throw sticks for him.
Do you remember what the dogs were called?
Yes, and the dogs are always called the same. The dogs change. But they were Juno, who was the sheepdog or cow dog, and Patsy, who was the gun dog. And
okay.
Because my uncle lived there partly as well, and he used to take the Patsy to pick up the things he shot.
Okay. Well, that's fair enough. Did you ever go with him?
No.
Okay.
No. I was never considered to take with him, and I think they thought it was potentially too dangerous anyway. So,
okay, that's fair enough.
So that was,
and did you have any other relatives in the village?
Not in the village. One who lived there, but what there were in the village were a relatively large number of people women who seemed related to the family.
Okay.
But they were second aunts, and I think that they represented, in fact, probably a series of children who were born out of wedlock. But the women were related within the
somehow.
Family, yeah, and were fairly close to the family as well.
Okay. So did people come up to the farm? Did they do, I don't know, Sunday lunches or?
They did Sunday lunch, but only for me and the dogs.
Oh, that sounds good.
No, well, the dogs weren't fed actually.
Okay. So where did the dogs live then?
Oh, in the coal shed.
Okay. All the time.
Yeah, well, unless they came out, yeah.
Yeah.
But they were never allowed in the house,
Okay.
ever. Nor were cats.
Did you have cats as well?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. And you said you had no water.
Yeah.
What you must have drunk, and you must have washed occasionally.
Occasionally is the right term, yes. But we had no running water. Correction. We had running water, but it was in a stream.
Okay. And where did the stream run?
When it flooded, straight through the farmyard. But we picked up the water from a more secure and cleaner point, a couple of 100 yards from the farm. So that was one of my jobs, to go and fill the milk cans, not with milk, but with water.
Okay. And did you have to boil the water before you drank it, or did you just drink it?
Oh no, just drank it. No, it was very clean water.
Oh, okay. Well, that's very different. And what did you do if you didn't have electricity? What did you do for light?
Candles and electric lamps.
Electric as in battery electric?
I mean, as in battery, oil lamps, sorry.
Oil lamps?
Oil lamps, yes. So I used to go to bed with a lighted candle.
Yeah. Just
to enable me to read. Perhaps I could read by then, but anyway. But there was a big use of candles, and certainly in the kitchen there was an oil lamp. In the eating room there was an oil lamp, and in the what was called the sitting room was an oil lamp as well.
And did you have, like a lot of Welsh houses I have been to, a room that you never used?
The real sitting room was never ever used in my 5 years there.
Yes.
And neither was the front door.
Okay, really?
None of the farms used the front door. You made access. You had access to the farm, effectively through the back door, which gave onto the farm.
Oh, okay. And you talked about living there during the war. So did the war ever come to you? Was there any evidence that there was a war on?
One of my grandfather being very interested in what was happening and getting the Daily Herald every day to see what the latest war news was.
Did you have to translate it from English to Welsh for him?
No, but probably. I don't think my grandmother translated it, and he wouldn't have been able to read very much, but he could probably read or have the headlines translated and have some photographs. That was one thing. Oh, and one of my jobs was to go down every day to get the newspaper.
Okay, down to where?
Oh, down to the village.
Oh, okay.
Because no one delivered anything to the farm. But anyway, I went down there, and the other very memorable did the war come to the farm, not in the sense which maybe you mean it, but from the fields of the farm, you could look down to Swansea and actually across the Severn estuary to Cornwall. But Swansea was quite heavily bombed in the war, and I remember being taken over to the hill, one of the fields, and see Swansea burning.
Crumbs, that must have been quite a...
Yes, I mean, it was a very memorable sight. Actually.
And did they wake you up to actually... Or did they just take you?
Well, it was dark, so I have no recollection. I don't recall going to bed very early, but... So that was a very memorable exercise.
And when you weren't chasing cows, what did you do for entertainment?
Oh, I listened to the radio, I suppose.
Okay, didn't go to the pictures. You hear of people going to the cinema a lot in the war.
Yeah, Mangi and I, my grandmother and I, frequently went to the pictures on Saturday night. Because another feature of most of the farms in the area was that on Saturday night, farms or otherwise, the men went to the pub.
Oh, okay.
And my grandfather went to the pub on Saturday night. So we went to the pictures. And in Pontardawe, which was not the village, wasn't a picture house there, but Pontardawe was the local small town. My grandmother bought fish and chips, which we carried back, by which time it was cold, but nevertheless, we had fish and chips back in the farm.
Oh, okay. Oh, that sounds interesting. Do you recall any of the films you went to see?
None at all.
But you'd go every Saturday?
Most Saturdays, yes. Most Saturdays.
Okay. And did you ever go into Swansea? Swansea has a lovely beach now, but did you ever go to Swansea?
Only when I was taken by, in fact, one of the aunts, not the second generation aunts, but one of the aunts of the brothers of the family. I remember being taken to Swansea and Mumbles, going on the Mumbles train to Mumbles once or twice.
Okay.
But then she moved away when she married, so I didn't go to the beach at all.
Oh. Okay.
But you know, we had not the stream I'm talking about for the water, but there was on the edge of the farm, one of the boundaries of the farm was also a stream, which came down from the hills, and so I had lots of fun down there, damming it, throwing stones in it, falling into it, and it was very nice. There's trees all around.
Okay, and did most people at school make friends? Did your friends come up to you, or did you go into the village?
None of the children from the school. I went to the infant school, where I don't remember any of the other children. And then at 7, I suppose, I went from the infant school to the junior school, I guess.
Can you remember what it's called?
It was called Pontardawe Boys' School.
That's very easy to remember.
Yeah. And I developed some friends there, and a particular one who was called Islwyn, that's a very Welsh name. But anyway, Islwyn Hopkin. And I became great friends with him, and I'm trying to say still am.
Oh, that's really nice.
But none of the children from any of the schools came to the farms anyway, because I think their parents would have thought it was too dangerous.
What, to come up the hill?
No, to come to the farm.
Oh, okay. They'd heard about the streams, perhaps.
Oh, they would have had a vision of what a hill farm was like, with no water and electricity, and probably very, very unhealthy.
And you talked about, that's interesting, talking about no water and electricity.
Yeah.
So, did you have a toilet?
No.
What did you have?
Oh, well, like every farm and many houses had, was what's known in Welsh as a tŷ bach. Tŷ bach, translated into English, means little house.
Mm.
So that we had a little house, actually a brick-built house, so it's quite posh, in the garden, or the bottom of the garden. And we used the Daily Herald or whatever newspaper we had, and sometimes the Farmers' Weekly, which I remember as being a very shiny newspaper.
Did you?
Anyway, just to touch and give something about, we didn't have running water other than the stream. The stream was very good because it provided our drinking water. Mm-hmm. It provided the water in the farmyard to cool the milk, because you couldn't cool the milk otherwise to get it shipped off. It provided not quite a bath, because the water was incredibly cold, but one was able to have, how shall I put it, a good wash, because there was no bath in the farm.
No bath at all?
No, there was no running water, there was no bath.
So you didn't have a tin bath or something?
Yes, but I didn't use it.
Okay.
In fact, in the little town which I spoke about, one of the second-level wives, relations, lived in a council house, and they had, very posh, they had a bath.
Oh, right.
So 2 or 3 times a year, I used to have a bath there, actually.
So did you have, in your room, I can only imagine it from a sort of Victorian point of view, a ewer and a jug?
No.
Oh, okay.
None of the bedrooms had running water.
No. You didn't have a bowl or something to...
I didn't know. If I needed a wash, I had to go down to the kitchen and and put a bowl, or go outside to the yard and have a wash in this, where we were cooling the milk.
Oh, okay. That's one
Not
thing.
when they were cooling the milk, but
yeah.
But getting back to the stream, which is an important part of our life there, and getting back to the tŷ bach, or the, I suppose you'd say shithouse in English, but anyway, the stream provided the place for the effluent from the.
Oh, right. So you just run it down the hill.
So you just dipped it into the stream, and
Off it went.
off it went.
Oh, wow. Okay. And you've talked about Saturdays and weekdays. What did you do on Sunday?
Oh, well, McKenzie went to church, as distinct from chapel.
Okay, you have to explain the difference. Not everybody will know the difference.
Oh, well, chapel was Church of Wales, stroke Church of England, and chapel was the range of nonconformist chapels, which McKenzie didn't want to go to, because there wasn't one close by, but the church was only 3/4 of a mile away.
Up the hill.
Up a hill. And of course the services were in Welsh as well.
Okay.
So it was a highly Welsh area. But she went to church every Sunday, and I used to walk up the hill to meet her from church and walk back down the hill with her.
That's very sweet. So what was the difference in between the junior school and in the infant school?
Oh, well, the infant school was at 5 to 7, I
Yeah.
guess, or 7.5 or 8 or something. Then the junior school was from 8 until 11.
But you can't remember a particular difference in the way the schools were.
Only that the infant school was obviously very small childrenish, with women teachers. I think only a couple of teachers, and they of course spoke Welsh anyway, which I guess most teachers did anyway at that time.
And was your junior school in English or in Welsh?
That was mainly English.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because there was a big difference between families who were English only and families who were Welsh.
Okay.
Big social difference.
Oh, right, okay.
With the English-speaking families considering themselves and being considered as much more upmarket than the Welsh-speaking families.
Oh, okay.
Which is one of the reasons why my mother couldn't get work locally, not because she spoke Welsh, which she did, and also did in her dying days.
I remember.
Yeah. Which was one thing that prompted me to improve my 80-year-old Welsh. No, it was English speaking in the. I don't remember any Welsh in that school, but as I said, by then the social differences.
Oh, okay. So you were considered a slightly lower class because you were from a Welsh speaking family.
I probably wasn't. It was less recognisable then. But certainly for my mother, it was a very real difference.
And so you get to junior school and you get to being 11-ish.
10, 11-ish, yeah.
So did you go to senior school in Wales or did you
No,
go to senior school in England?
I came because the war ended then.
Yeah.
And so I came back and went to the local comprehensive in Hayes.
Okay.
Local comprehensive because when I came back, my father had me take the 11 plus, which I'd had no training for anyway, so failed, which is why I went to the local comprehensive for a year. My father made me organise and arranged for me to be able to take the 11 plus 1 year later, 12 plus, which I took. And I got through that and then changed school from a comprehensive school to a grammar school.
Okay, before we come to the grammar school, was it a big shock going to an English school? Did you find it very strange going from a Welsh school to
an English school
or a school in England?
Perhaps I would change the emphasis of that. I think I was perceived as an oddity by the school, and by everyone in the school.
Yeah.
Because, as I said, I had a very heavy Welsh accent, which I wasn't aware of course. But that's where I got the Taffy McKenzie bit from.
Okay.
Which which I lived with for the rest of the school. Even the teachers called me Taffy McKenzie.
Really? Oh dear. I'm not sure that'd be allowed now. But
no. Well, otherwise I'd have been just McKenzie.
Oh, okay. So there you are.
Yeah, because the boys were all called by their surnames and the girls by their first names.
Oh. So the comprehensive was at a mixed school?
No, that was boys' only school, yeah.
So you go to grammar school, and where was the grammar school?
It was actually in Southall.
And how far is Southall from Hayes?
Oh, it was a 3-mile cycle ride.
Okay, and you cycled?
I for the 7 years, mainly cycled. Not all the time, but mostly cycled, yes.
Okay, and what was being at grammar school like?
Very enjoyable.
Okay.
I chose, within the part of Middlesex where I lived, there was no grammar school in Hayes, but there were a number of other grammar schools, 4 or 5 in the accessible area to which I could have gone to, presumably. But I chose Southall for two reasons. It finished lessons at 3:30 in the afternoon instead of 4 o'clock. And B, girls went to it.
Oh, it was a mixed school.
That was a mixed school.
Oh, okay.
Most of the grammar schools are mixed schools.
Oh, right. Oh, okay. Well, that seems reasonable.
Oh, well, I thought it was very reasonable.
What was the grammar school called?
Southall County Grammar School.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, wow.
Which doesn't exist anymore, actually.
Okay. And what did you study when you were at school?
My recollection is the range of not educational subjects, but sort of maths or arithmetic, English, French, science at a pretty low level, but can't think of anything else. But
okay. So your dad was a pharmacist. Did he want you to be a pharmacist too?
he would very much have liked me to, particularly as to be a pharmacist, particularly as he did very well. He a pharmacist, then he was an assistant manager of a pharmacy in Hayes, and gradually over the years he saved up enough to be able to, then a manager of or assistant manager of a pharmacy, and then he became a manager of a pharmacy, and he eventually bought a pharmacy.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So during the latter part of my grammar school years, he could see that it would have been very nice for him and for me actually to be with him in the shop as a qualified pharmacist.
Oh, okay. But you chose a different path.
I chose and was forced to choose a different path because to be a pharmacist you had to have studied sciences at least O level, preferably A level if you were going to do pharmacy at a college of some sort. And I wasn't keen or interested in science, had only done it at a very low level. So therefore I had to choose the arts subjects, which then were history, geography and French, which I did all of them at A level. I actually got a state scholarship based on my results in those.
Oh, okay, that's interesting. And what were the teachers like at your grammar school?
Oh, I guess a mixed bunch, as at any school, even now. But in broad terms, older ones who by then were approaching retirement and had been there for some years, and more thrusting younger ones in the sciences, in languages, and who were not largely women, but a bigger female contingent than amongst the older people.
I remember a story that you told me once about the sports teacher who didn't think very much of you.
A mutual feeling. He didn't like me, and I know why, because he considered me, this is by the time I was in the fifth form, but he considered me as a fifth form lout.
Oh, really?
Yes, I mean it's hard to imagine, I understand. But anyway, he probably thought that before I got to the fifth form. And, you had to do football and running around if you didn't do football or cricket, you had to run around the playing field, which I also didn't like. So I didn't like his subjects. And by extension, I didn't like him. And by further extension, he didn't like me.
Oh, okay. I have read of a lot of post-war schools being quite difficult because you had men who'd come back from the army or from the war, and they were a bit traumatised, for want of a better word, and they sort of took it out on the children. Did you ever see any of that?
I was absolutely not aware of that, actually.
Oh, okay.
I think there's a very large yes, a very large gap between the teachers and the children.
Okay.
Perhaps less so in the sixth form because you were that much older, supposedly that much more mature, could take on tasks within the school like distributing stationery to the classes, things of great responsibility. But anyway, there were things which
Oh, okay.
you had. Your profile was also a bit different as
Oh,
well.
okay. You talk about not being interested in the sports that were held at school, but at the time, weren't you cycling all over the place?
Oh yes, I did an enormous amount of cycling.
And how did that start? How did the cycling start?
I don't recall it starting other than an interest on my part. I also did quite a lot of hiking or walking.
Okay.
And I had a bike and started just using it and went quite long distances in a day on it, in fact.
How far in a day? What's the furthest you went in a day?
Well, in a day, the first I went was from Hayes to Gloucester, which is 95 miles, and back.
Okay.
So it's best part of
miles.
a couple of 100 miles. But the back was all at night.
Goodness.
So, but of course, with far less traffic on the roads, not only at night, but during the day. It's not what I would wish to do now, but never mind my age, but I wouldn't want to do that now.
And didn't you also used to cycle to your grandmother's?
Oh yes, I used to. Yes, I mean several times. This was in the years after I left the farm. I felt very close, very integrated with the farm, even though I wasn't there. And so I went back there every year for my holidays.
Oh, right, on the bicycle?
And I usually went by bike, yes. But not in a day. I would stay at a youth hostel overnight.
Goodness. How long would it take?
Oh, 2 days. I would just stay overnight in Gloucester or Monmouth.
So for those of us who only know the M4 to Wales, how would you get to Pontardawe on a bicycle?
Oh, you just get on the A40 and follow it. Not quite that, but yes, because the A40 still doesn't go to South Wales, but it still goes to Fishguard, which is the end of Wales. In fact, I bought a new bike by working at a baker's delivering bread further into Wales because they needed someone because of holidays. So for 6 weeks I delivered bread in very, very rural Wales.
Not on your bicycle, though?
Yeah.
What did you use to do?
He had a van.
Oh, right.
Yeah, so I drove the van round.
Did you have a driving licence?
Yeah. Of course, it was my uncle who never had a driving licence.
Okay, fair.
Even when he was driving, he didn't have a driving licence.
Okay, that's a different story.
Yeah.
So, but also at the same time, didn't you develop a real interest in steam engines and trains and things?
Oh, yes, from quite an early age I was interested in railways or in engines. Or in fact, in collecting engine numbers, which sounds pathetic from this distance, but nevertheless it was an important element in my life, and with many people, teenagers or young teenagers. So we all had our Ian Allen books with all the numbers in, and your achievement was seeing the locomotive of that number and underlining it until you'd seen all the numbers in that class. Did you have a group of people you knew from school who used to go with? Some of them, yes.
And did you just sit on the end of Southall Station? Or did you
No. Well, there was an engine shed in Southall, so one tried to walk around it, and so you could get in 15 minutes a lot of engine numbers. Mind you, they tended to be the same engine numbers. But anyway, or going to engine sheds in different parts of the country.
What sort of places did you go to?
Manchester, Birmingham, Oxford, Cardiff, Bristol, and usually not alone. It was just, I know, it's just more comfortable going with someone who you knew, actually.
Yeah. Oh, interesting.
So that was, but I mean, you weren't supposed to, and you usually got chased out. But
What, of the engine sheds?
out of the engine shed, because it was highly dangerous. Kids there with engines shunting around. Anyway,
I have a sort of vision of going around in shorts and a jumper. Did you go around in shorts and a jumper, or were you in long trousers when you did these expeditions?
cool. I've no idea.
Okay. So you're at school. You've got a interesting relationship with the sports master, and so you come to do your O levels. Did you do them at 16 or did you do them at 17?
I did them at 17. Yeah.
And you didn't have any thought about leaving school?
I don't think it would cross my mind,
okay.
because I think that I was aware enough of the world that you could get a better job if you have more qualifications.
Okay. But did lots of people leave?
The vast majority of people left the school at 15 or whatever.
15, so they didn't even do their O levels?
Oh, well, they probably, yes, they did their O levels.
Okay.
They left after the fifth form.
Oh, so they were 16?
Yeah, they were 17, 18 years. Yeah.
Okay.
And I mean, there were, at Southall in the grammar school, there were 4 classes in each year with, I can't remember exactly, but at least 25 children in each class, at least.
Okay.
So there were 100 children in each year up till the fifth form, including the fifth form. And then you went into the lower sixth, and there were probably only 25.
Oh wow! So two-thirds of the school, 3/4 of the school.
Yeah, left and whatever.
Okay.
And I mean, in the sixth form, probably half were girls.
Okay.
Probably.
And you, what A levels? What subjects did you study?
I did for A level. I did French history and French history and geography.
And why did you choose those subjects?
Because I liked them, and I liked history and geography, and I liked French as well,
Okay.
which is an area which I've developed, subsequently actually.
And you hadn't been to France?
No. Oh well, yes, in the sixth form.
Okay.
The former, the head of French in the sixth form, the head of French in the school, was very keen that the children went to France, so I went on, I think, 2 school trips to France. Yeah.
Where did you go?
One to Annecy, in the Alps, or just in the Alps, and the second one I think was to Paris.
Wow. That's
So yeah, and I enjoyed that. I enjoyed being in France. I enjoyed using my A-level French and improving it.
Mm-hmm.
Also, by then you were more mature, more responsible, and I think we had 2 teachers going with us, and perhaps 12 or 15 children, not that many, well, whatever. And you're treated, very much as at least a young adult.
Okay.
There, in terms of drinking and going to restaurants and going to art galleries and.
So was it's a silly question, I suppose. Was Paris very different from Hayes?
Very, and even more different from Shumito, which was the name of the farm.
Ah, okay. Yeah, I can imagine that. And then, when you came to the end of your education, you didn't just do A levels, did you?
Oh no, I went to university.
But you did. No, what I mean is, you had to do A levels, but didn't you do AS levels as well?
Oh yes, I did scholarship levels.
Oh, okay.
And managed to get a scholarship.
Wow. So you left grammar school with a scholarship.
I did, yeah. This was paid for by the county council, which was Middlesex.
Yeah.
But as a snippet of something different, my father didn't qualify for it.
Oh, I see. Oh, really?
He, as a pharmacist, he earned too much.
Ah.
So, as much to the chagrin and disappointment, even anger of my father, he didn't qualify. I think there was a token £300
Oh, okay.
or something like that.
And sort of you come to the end of school, and now people will do something to celebrate the end of school. In the period between school and university, did you do anything special? Did you go anywhere, or did you just?
I actually cannot remember. I think I probably served in the shop to earn some money. Oh no, of course, that was when I bought the bike, which I was talking about, because I had longer to work in a place called Lampeter, which is a very rural town in Wales. But I enjoyed delivering bread. As I say, it was all Welsh speaking, to farms and homes.
And who did you stay with? Your aunts?
I stayed with, in fact, she was an aunt, who was had been a district nurse in the wilds of Wales, and eventually married, or her husband had to go away in the war. So she continued being a district nurse in a really wild area, remote area of Wales. But with that, she got a little Austin 7 car provided by whoever provided Austin 7 cars. I mean, it was the company, but she needed a car to get around.
Mm.
And it was such a wild area that, and there were telephones, and not everyone had a telephone, but they could get access to a telephone. But when she might get a call from a farm saying, my wife is now giving birth, can you come? There are at least 2 occasions which I recall when she took the car to the nearest place, the nearest farm to the other farm which was giving birth, and they came and got her on a horse. So it doesn't happen like that now.
I'm sure it doesn't. And then you came back to
Hayes. I got my new bike, which I then took to Birmingham with me.
And that's where you went to university?
And that's where I went to university. And then that's all actually a different story.
Excellent. All right, well, I think we'll end there. Thank you very much.